It all began in the early 1990s in the small rural town of Ellensburg, Washington, where a man named Mel Waters lived on a remote piece of property. Mel was an ordinary man by most accounts, just a guy living on a sprawling piece of land, working on his personal projects, and doing what many country folk do, minding his own business. However, his life would take a strange and unexplainable turn when he discovered what he initially thought to be just another odd feature of his land, a large circular hole. This hole, as Mel would later describe in a series of interviews, was roughly 9 feet in diameter and unlike anything he'd ever seen before. At first, it didn't seem particularly remarkable. It was deep enough to throw some garbage into, so he began using it as a dumping ground. As Mel continued to dispose of trash and debris into the hole, he began to notice that something was unusual about it. Whenever he threw objects into the hole, rocks, tree branches, even large pieces of equipment, nothing ever seemed to hit the bottom. He tied a 6-foot steel rod to a rope and lowered it into the hole. As the rope wound down, he kept waiting for the familiar sound of the rod hitting the bottom. It never came. At this point, Mel was no longer treating the hole as a mere curiosity. The property, his hole, had become something much stranger. He began dropping more unusual objects into it, including larger items that he believed could provide some clues about the hole's nature. But just like everything else, they vanished without a trace. It was only when Mel began experimenting with animals that the situation took an even stranger turn. Weeks later, something unsettling happened. Mel found the same dog wandering around his property, alive and seemingly unharmed. He was baffled. The dog's reappearance only raised more questions about the hole's properties. Could this hole be some sort of interdimensional rift? Was it connected to time travel, or perhaps to some type of otherworldly force? As Mel's story began to spread among friends and family, word eventually got out to a larger audience. It wasn't long before Mel's hole was mentioned on local news stations, and before long it had caught the attention of paranormal enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists alike. But it wasn't just the public who took notice. According to Mel, agents from the US government soon arrived at his property. Mel described the government agents as being polite, but clearly not interested in a casual conversation. They asked him for the exact location of the hole and pressed him for details about his discoveries, including the returning animals and objects. Mel believed that the government had some sort of vested interest in the hole, whether it was due to its potential for scientific research or, more chillingly, because they feared it might be something more dangerous. To add to the mystery, Mel claimed that black helicopters were seen flying over his property on multiple occasions, an ominous sign of government surveillance. Amidst all the bizarre incidents, one of the most surreal moments in the Mel's Hole story came when Mel described a mysterious metal box that he found near the hole. According to him, it seemed to have been thrown from the hole itself. He also claimed to have seen other mysterious objects emerge from the hole, including rocks and debris that seemed to defy gravity. These objects appeared to have unusual properties, almost as though they had come from another world or dimension. Eventually, Mel's hole began to fade from the public eye. As Mel was seemingly silenced by the government, and as his land was taken from him, the stories slowly disappeared from the media. Several years passed after hearing about Mel's hole on Art Bell's Coast to Coast. Mel was notified by a group of Basques in rural Nevada. When Mel arrived, he noticed that it was a very similar hole to the one up in Washington, except for a metallic rim that circled the hole. The next experiment was to put a sheep in a basket and lower it into the hole. The sheep was in sheer terror, not wanting to go anywhere near the hole. As they dissected the sheep, its insides appeared to be cooked. What they removed from sheep's stomach was a tumor-like growth. As they opened the tumor-like growth, a seal-like creature jumped out with what appeared to be a placenta-like tube attached to it. Mel described the creature as a baby seal with human eyes. The seal stared once more at the group before jumping back into the well. Mel described the scene as a religious experience. Since the initial broadcast, the legend of Mel's Hole has continued to be a source of speculation and debate. Some have theorized that Mel's Hole was a natural sinkhole, but the strange phenomena described by Mel, such as the returning animals, the government's involvement, and the apparent anomalous properties of objects from the hole, have led many to dismiss such simple explanations. Mel's Hole has continued to captivate the curious, the skeptical, and the paranormal community for nearly 3 decades. Whether it's a hoax, an elaborate conspiracy, or a genuine anomaly, The story of Mel's Hole remains one of the most intriguing and haunting mysteries in American folklore. But as long as the legend persists, it stands as a reminder that the world is filled with mysteries that remain unsolved, and some may remain beyond our understanding, hidden away by forces we may never fully comprehend. The story of Mel's Hole has become an icon in the world of the unexplained, whether it's a hoax, a misinterpretation of natural phenomena, or something else entirely. It remains one of the most perplexing and captivating mysteries of modern times.